Hi there, thank you for joining me. It's Ray with Tarot Living. I hope everyone's doing well. So today I'm actually going to introduce you to a few other types of decks. I had a request to talk about a few other decks that I have because I think people have seen that I have, several decks in my possession. So I thought that I would actually review some that you may know about but may not have seen much of, and then others that you actually may not have seen. So let's get started. The first one that I'm actually going to talk about, which I have talked about in other videos, but this is kind of my introduction into a video I'm going to do next, which is the DruidCraft. So this is actually a brand new box of just the cards alone. You can actually get a larger box, which you can see behind me right there, and that box actually comes with the book as well. So I wanted to mention it because I'm going to be doing a video next on all of the different ways that you can trim or take a look at working with the DruidCraft, because they do come as very large cards, and I think that that's a little bit daunting or unappealing for some people. So I'm going to actually do a video next on that. So I wanted to talk about this deck first. So it is actually created by Philip and Stephanie Carr-Gomm, and so they are the ones obviously who wrote the book and developed the concept and the premise of the deck. And it's illustrated by Will Worthington. And the illustration is absolutely beautiful. So it is more on the realistic side. So if that's something that interests you, and you're wanting a little more realism and images that look very close to realism, then this might be the deck for you. If you like a more kind of cartoony illustration, then something else might be better. So some of the descriptions that they have about this particular deck is that they're trying to take the concept of Wicca and Druidry and kind of combining them together and taking a look at it as DruidCraft, which the craft part is the Wicca or witchcraft part. It's very based on nature, it's based on cycles, and the concepts that you find within the book are actually not overly complex, and they are certainly not, they don't take over the entire deck and suggest that you have to follow those concepts in order to utilize the deck well and happily. It's a very Rider-Waite, it follows that tradition. Certainly the images are very clear and very recognizable to those of us who really have worked with Rider-Waite mostly. So I think they're really just adding something to it by bringing in the Druid and the Wicca traditions. And they also speak a lot about bringing in many of the concepts that the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn had explored, and some of the mysteries and the esoteric traditions. And of course we know that the Hermetic Order brought in the astrological references and such. So they're not speaking about the astrology piece of it, but they're just saying that they're also combining much of what the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn brought forth originally. Which allowed Arthur Waite to create Rider-Waite, and of course Crowley to create the Thoth deck. And this deck actually comes with a great book, and a lot of people may not know that. And so it actually has a comprehensive book in it that not only has the description of the cards, which are excellent and very solid in their descriptions, and actually even take it a little bit further sometimes or give you a slightly different way of looking at it, but they're very solid interpretations. And not only that, they actually go through numbers as well, in terms of what number 8 means or what number 4 means, etc. And they also talk a little bit about what the basic meanings of pages, knights, queens, kings. And so there is actually some great sections in there, and it makes for a comprehensive book and a great deck for, I think, beginners, because it is, it does follow Rider-Waite, images and illustrations. So if you're familiar with that or somewhat familiar with that or want to follow that, it does that for you, and it also has a great book. So that is actually the first one on my list today that I wanted to talk about, and I have talked about it before in my top 5 favorite videos. It is my top deck. It's my favorite deck, and so stay tuned and go if you want to know more about this deck and how to ways that you can cut down these cards and make them a little bit more manageable. I'm going to actually open this box that I've just purchased with just the cards only, and I'm actually going to do a little bit of that and tell you about it. So you can go to that video next if you're interested more in DruidCraft. So that is the first deck that I wanted to talk about today, and I know I have before, but that's all I'm going to say about it. Now we're going to move on to some really interesting decks. Okay, and the next deck that I want to introduce you to is a deck I'm very excited about. I actually recently ordered it and it arrived in perfect condition very quickly, and it is called the Hezicos Tarot. And I'm actually just going to show you the covers so that you can see the name, Hezicos Tarot. And it actually is created and designed and illustrated by a woman named Mary Griffin, who is in the UK. And she has a very whimsical style. And in her little book, it actually comes with a little book as well. The book outlines that she kind of specializes in art that has some fairy themes and animals, and she has a very whimsical style to her artwork. It is done in watercolor, and then she scans the painting and then sort of finalizes it, on the computer and kind of cleans it up and put in some of the font as well. So this deck, I just want to show you several of the images because it really varies in terms of the color scheme, which I think is absolutely fantastic. That's one of the things that I like about it the most, is that it has such a range of color scheme. So that is the Judgment card. Isn't that just stunning? And I can guarantee you it doesn't even do it justice on the computer. So this is actually quite green, but it's hard to see it on the computer, but the background is quite green. And here's the Empress. So she has a lot of pinks and she uses purple. She's not afraid to use pinks and purples. Here's another one that has some pink in it, so that's the High Priestess. I'm not very good at holding my cards today. So that's the High Priestess. And she also uses some reds really well in this deck, and this is actually the Devil card, and she said she's had a few reviews of how scary that card is, and it is pretty scary actually, but it's wonderful. And this is actually the Strength card, so you can see all the detail work. As I say, she works in watercolor. She draws everything out and then works in watercolor on 140-pound paper. And there's the Strength card, so very vibrant yellow. And I want to show you some of the rods as an example of some of the whimsy and some of the unique qualities that she's brought to this deck. So this is actually the 5 of rods, and I don't know if you can see that, how the rods actually have little arms. And so she's really brought some of the elements alive. The rods are almost alive, and they've got little faces and little arms, and fighting it out kind of thing. And here you can see on the end of each rod, there's actually a little face. And so there's many different faces and many different tiny little qualities that you can take a look at in these cards. And so I think it just continues to come alive the more that you look at it. So it's a great deck. As I say, the box is fantastic. It's that is the top and the bottom of the box. I don't want to put it together because I want to be able to show you that top really well. So Hezicos Tarot. The cardstock is absolutely fantastic. The quality of it is great. It is just a perfect thickness, and it's not warping at all. It's just a great deck in terms of quality. You can tell that she cares very much about the quality. And there's the back of the card, just in case you want to take a look at that. And the little book that comes with it. So that's the back of the card in the little book. So please do check out this deck on my full-length video of it. So check out the Hezicos Tarot video. I'm actually going to show all of the images so that you're able to view the entire deck, and there'll be information there of how to order this deck if you're interested in it. So I just wanted to introduce you to something you may not have seen. So great deck, and another suggestion for you. Okay, and the third deck I want to tell you about today is actually a deck you may have heard of and may not have heard of, and you certainly may not have seen some of the images. So I wanted to introduce you to this deck. And it is called Tarot of the Sidhe. So it's actually spelled Sidhe, something like that, but if you read the book, she actually says that the pronunciation is she. And she is apparently an ancient Gaelic word for a race of fairies that, or fairy beings that dwell in the hollow hills and burial mounds of the same name. So it's got very Gaelic, and it has sort of a history of fairy world to it. And I think that it may not be for everybody, but I think it's really worth checking out because the images are absolutely beautiful. I have a tarot friend, my friend Jason, who took a look at it and said, oh, I love that deck, and just felt very, very drawn to the images. So I think that there's something out there for everybody, and so you may want to take a look at this one. It does not follow the Rider-Waite tradition as much as other decks, that's for sure. Actually, the elements are represented a little bit differently, and so I'm going to tell you about the elements. So for fire, it's actually warrior, and so that's actually the warrior king. I want to hold it down here because the words are up at the top. So that's actually the king of warrior, and so that's actually the king of wands, so fire. And maker is earth, and so that's pentacles, and so that's the queen of earth. So makers are earth in this deck. And this is the Dancer Prince, and Dancer is water, and so it's cups in another deck. And that is the prince, and there's princesses, and so this is Dreamer Princess, and so dreamers are air, and so that's swords in another deck. So quite different. I mean, it still follows the 78 card, layout, but as I say, the elements are represented differently. So a fire and wands are warrior, dancer is water or cups, dreamer is air or swords, and maker is pentacle or earth. So I'm just going to show you a few of the images. That's actually the world card. So very beautiful, and it has a very beautiful black border. So as I say, this deck is by Emily Carding, and it actually is a deck that's published by Schiffer, and it was published in 2010, so not very long ago. And that is the Empress. Isn't that absolutely stunning? So the colors are beautiful in this deck. Here's actually the aces. So the aces actually just say fire at the bottom, or whatever element it is, and then warrior, which is the other name for it. So really, the aces are a little bit different in this deck as well. And here is a Dancer 8, so that would be water 8. So a little bit, quite different really than Rider-Waite. So you've actually got 8 people's arms, I guess, that are coming out of the water. And usually in the Rider-Waite, the 8 of cups, the fellow is walking away from the cups. So it doesn't follow that tradition. And that's Dancer 7. So that again would be 7 of cups. And here's Dreamer 10. So that would actually be 10 of swords. So very different images. So you can see those scary eyes in that one. So she's definitely depicted the red and the intensity of that card, but depicted differently. And I think that for me, I don't typically read with decks that are not at least semi, Rider-Waite similar, because I've developed meanings for the cards within the Rider-Waite system, and I keep developing them and expanding upon that. And so I don't usually veer outside of it too much, but I am a tarot card collector, and so this is one of the decks that I wanted to collect. And I'm also actually painting my own deck, and so that is more artistic inspiration, I think, is part of the reason that I order a lot of decks. And there could be a slight bit of obsession there, but don't mention it, okay? Anyway, these cards are really quite beautiful, and the cardstock is quite thick. Schiffer, I've seen a couple of decks that they've created, and they tend to have quite thick cardstock, and that's actually the back of the deck. So it's quite shiny, definitely a more laminated approach, and quite thick. You can see how thick that card is. The box is fantastic, so the quality is great. So here's the front of the box again that I had already shown. Tarot of the She, and it is just like a London blue box, and you pull it off, and there you go. So I'm not going to show you all of the cards. This is really just an introduction into a few different decks. So might be a deck for you. Check it out. Great quality, beautiful images. And I said, you know, as I said, I had a friend who looked at it and was very drawn to it and really felt quite connected to it. And so it could be a deck for you. I just wanted to introduce you to that one today. Okay, so stay tuned for the second part of this video, which is going to be another 3 decks that are very interesting and wonderful. So please do go to part 2 of this video and you can check out 3 more interesting decks. Thanks for watching Tarot Living.